There's still another story that has been causing a lot of rift, that is to do with the curriculum. Professor George Magoha, the Cabinet Secretary, versus Wilson Sossion, the Kenya National Union of Teachers Secretary General. Let's just take a look at some of the up sounds, the voices that the two have been having the past 1 week.
You cannot pick people with business interest and a few technocrats at the Ministry of Education and call it public participation. This is exactly what happened before the purported launch of the policy. We cannot be invited as flower girls to go and cheer a policy that we have not participated in. We will never be flower girls.
We have held over 20 consultative meetings with critical stakeholders, and there are many, and we are continuing in that trajectory. And I believe now the next group is the clergy.
Will Magoha teach? Will he teach in every classroom in Kenya? Every classroom in Kenya. It is the teachers. Yeah. And the teachers have spoken. And we've made it very clear. We will teach using the normal pedagogical method that we were trained. And that's the advice we've given now. What force is he going to use?
If you have something better, why don't you tell us what it is, or shut up?
All right, so that's the standoff. And of course, last week we got an opportunity to look at the report of the Committee on Education in Parliament, the National Assembly, of course, detailing several issues in as far as how they looked at the sessional paper. And there are several issues that they do not agree with, and they have requested the Minister of Education to revise the sessional paper before it can be passed. And so, gentlemen, we have a situation where we are rolling out, in the 5th month of rolling out a curriculum. We just launched the National Curriculum Policy last week. The sessional paper is still being looked at by the National Assembly. These two documents were supposed to have been passed before getting to rollout, and now we're in the thick of it. So how do we move from here? Because the teachers have said through the union that we are not going to teach using this new curriculum, and the ministry has insisted we have to go ahead with the curriculum.
I don't think even the teachers are refusing to teach the new curriculum. They don't understand it. They don't know it. And again, Sam, we are just getting back to what we were saying. This Matiang'i type of administration of forcing things down the throat of Kenyans and talking at Kenyans instead of talking to them. The education curriculum is a very, very important aspect in our development. It is not anything you can do alone. You need to bring everybody on board. And more so the teachers, because at the end of the day, the way Sossion was saying, and I have said it here before, Magoha will not be in any classroom. You'll just be in Jogo House, behind his desk. If you don't bring the enablers on board so that they are part of it, how are they going to implement a new curriculum that they don't believe in? This country, we must be consultative. You know, the Constitution is very clear. Any new law, any new policy must undergo serious public participation. This system was brought again by Matiang'i. Magoha is coming to implement something that was done before. You remember, CS Amina Mohammed had said we hold on a little bit because we are not yet there. And the new CS has come with a lot of energy, saying that he has no reverse gear. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. He doesn't want to listen to anybody. How are we going to implement something people do not believe in? People do not understand. The parents do not understand it. The pupils do not understand it. The teachers are not part of it. Even if you shout from Jogo House that it must be done because it's a government policy. And we want to agree with the Parliamentary Committee on Education that there are so many things that needs to be done. They need to look at the session paper. They need to really answer very many questions that are being asked. And let us not rush. You know, we rushed to 844. And we got into a lot of problems. This is not, there is no, what is a hurry? Why can't we wait a little bit and get our figures right, get all the aspects correctly? What is a hurry? What would go wrong if we did not continue with the curriculum tomorrow? You know, we are behaving like the world is coming to an end. What is so much hurry? And why is it so difficult for the CS to accept that he must engage the stakeholders?
Senator Cherargei, do you agree with Wilson Sossion, the Secretary General there, saying that we have made education now into a business?
Of course, absolutely. I agree with Sosian, although somebody says there is a loose nut. I had the CSE in charge of education with a lot of energy. Firstly is that Article 53 of the Constitution, child's best interest, it is basic education. And I think the future of this country is in the proper education that we are channeling out. And it is very interesting that the Ministry of Education is issuing threats to teachers. You know, you can't work. Over 160 teachers have been interdicted because of questioning the process. When you look at Article 10 of the Constitution on national values and principles of good governance, one of the key components, and I want to thank Parliamentary Committee on Education, led by one of my MPs, Julius Melly, they said there was no public participation. The public participation is very critical. We saw the other day they issued directive on delocalization. Many teachers committed suicide, they died. Secondly, now we are seeing interdictions over the CBC. Thirdly, we are seeing there is a lot of confusion, and we have a CS who is over seriously, and is a disaster waiting to happen in the Ministry of Education. Because when somebody says, I don't have a reverse gear, and he says, when I do something, I must do it. How do you do it without consultation from the key stakeholders? Even at the beginning of this year, the CPC learning materials had some errors in terms of its materials, and many of the stakeholders complained. There is no role of the society, there is no role of parents, and I think the CS in charge of education should be very careful, because if he runs the Ministry of Education the way he's running, I'm telling you, he will not take long in that ministry, although he's enforcing the issues or the agendas that had been raised by the Interior CS, Matiang'i. And I want to say finally, as I conclude on that part, I think the country, as Senator Sakaja said, could be at war with its own peoples, because everything in this country you are being threatened.
Of the government.
Even you can't sleep, it's like even somebody can come and threaten you to sleep. Although some of these things are voluntary.
All right, Senator Ledama, when you look at the history of the curriculum standoff that we have now, when the year was beginning, CS Amina Mohammed said we cannot go on with this curriculum. Then the president came and said we have to implement it. And so the minister, the CS here, Professor Mago, is following instructions. So how do you ensure that, yes, we have whatever the government wants to do, but also ensure there is as minimal standoff as possible in rolling out such kind of critical policies in our education?
I think the first thing which is critical is that every policy that this government comes up with must respect the Constitution. Article 43, 1F gives every child the right to education in this country. So when you come up with a policy, and then through that policy, you punish the teachers who are supposed to ensure that that child gets a right, then what you're doing is that you are violating the right of that child. In Mashuru, in Kajiado County, there are over 58 teachers who were interdicted. In Kisii, there are 41 teachers who are interdicted because they do not agree with the curriculum-based, the competency-based curricula. I think what we need is public participation. I agree with Sosian entirely, and I think what Magoha, is it called Magoha or Magoka? Professor Magoha, that cabinet secretary, need to come back to reality and understand that for a very long time, he was just a civil servant. You know, he's not in touch with the people on the ground. And to tell you the truth, I'm an 844 breed. I'm here because of that curriculum. I don't see anything wrong with it. You know,
so
people have not. I think it's all about knee-jerk reaction, money. It's all business, and I agree with Sosian when he says it's all about money, because when you think about it, it's an economy that revolves around publication of new books, you know, new teaching materials. It's all money. What we need to remember is that, first of all, the press has been very active in showing how deplorable our schools are. You know, the Jubilee government came up with that issue of the laptops. I went and I said it will fail. It failed because it is actually misguided policies. And we cannot allow that. And we shall not allow that. In fact, in the Senate, we will end up constituting a committee of the whole to ensure that we question that, because the Constitution gives us the right to defend the interests of the Kenyans. We have to question that, and at the end of the day, and when we are sitting there, we have the same powers as the High Court. And the High Court has already pronounced itself and said teachers should not be punished because they do not agree. We cannot go back to what my colleague was talking about, a unitary state where it is like dictatorship. You cannot force people things, you know, down through their throats. You've got to consult them And if you don't consult them, just prepare for disaster.
Okay, we need to close on this. And the final question I want to ask you is, so we see all these things happening, yet we have an oversight mechanism through Parliament. Why are you not able to stop such kind of things that we end up with the situation we are at, and especially the National Assembly?
I think the oversight role of Parliament is being applied very effectively, but we're having a lot of impunity. Because where you see fight like the High Court has pronounced itself on a matter like the Huduma number, and then the CS in charge is forcing things down the throat of Kenyans, there's a lot of impunity. And you have seen that particular CS has been called many times to Parliament. And he is feigning that he's very busy, having security meetings.
We forced him to appear, yes.
Eventually he comes.
Yes. But you can see there's a lot of evasiveness. And these are the things that we want to put in order. And I want to tell these people, this situation of the 90s cannot work in this era that we are.
Okay.
And for the Matiangis and the Makohas of this world, I would like to refer them to a verse in the Bible, because the Bible is very, very authoritative. Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. It says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that he'll also reap. This thing they are forcing people, it will reach a point where people will say no. And we don't want to reach there, Sam. We want people to be obedient to government. We want people to respect authority, because that is what the Bible says. And that is what Kenyans know. And people respect authority along the way. But if you force everything down, even things that are not tenable, even things people can see, surely these are things that cannot work, it will reach a point where people will say no.
Senator Cherargei, your closing comments on this matter?
In fact, Sam has asked a very good question. What are Parliament doing to stop some of these issues? You had the same CSS, they don't want to appear before Parliament. And yet the Parliament is the representative of the people. We represent you, elected us. But you hear some CSS in some conferences or in some meetings, they are saying, when you invite them, because I'm a chair of a committee, they write a letter and tell you they are traveling abroad or they're having a high-level meeting, and what they are doing is just they are meeting the entrepreneurs. They don't want to appear before Parliament to answer some of these questions. Like that when we prepare of course, we know it happens day in and out, and some ministers are known to do that, the cabinet secretaries. What I wanted to say is because there is a process, before the committee investigates, there is a report that is presented to the Parliament, to the plenary. The parliamentarians choose it to adopt or not. When they adopt, it is being transmitted for the action, and the Parliament has the same status as the High Court. So one of the biggest challenges is some of these cabinet secretaries feel too important to appear before us to answer some of these questions. And it has reached a time that some of them must be sanctioned, some of them must be voted of no confidence, because you cannot bully us around or
will
roll
you
us
exactly
around.
do
Yes,
that?
we will.
Will you?
Yes, we shall.
Yes. Okay.
Let me put it this way. You know, I believe that we have a very good president. President Kenyatta is a fine gentleman. We have a lot of respect for. But the problem here is that the president is completely, what do you call it, misinformed. He's misadvised by the people who he has chosen to represent his interests. Parliament, you talked about oversight. Article 125 of the Constitution gives us the powers to summon any witness and the power to ensure that that someone is respected.
Okay.
You know, what we are doing, Sam and Zinzi, in this Committee of PAC, if you fail to appear, we apply the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act and we penalize you. We have done so for various governors. Personally, you have to pay over 500,000 shillings.
Have they?
Yes, they have. Sonko was the first one to pay. You know, we have the governor from Kwale. He has done that, Mvurya. And in fact, let me tell you something. When we have the powers to call for any evidence, and that is the same power we're going to do. We will not relent. We now call upon the president to relook at the people that he appoints to represent his interest. These are the people who will make or destroy your legacy. And the only way that we can actually move forward as a country is when policies are brought and we embrace them, you know, willingly. But when there is dissent And when we are not, when things are being forced down our throat, we will rebel. Okay. And that's what is going to happen in this country.
All right. Just a note is that the National Assembly Committee on Education has already finalized on its report on the sessional paper. It has been tabled before the House, and it will be debated as soon as the House returns from recess. And should it be endorsed, then those requirements or those revisions will be binding on the side of the Ministry of Education.